Happy birthday, Mommy!
Thank you.
Okay, blow the candles.
Blow the candles?
Yeah.
I don't have any candles.
It's okay. You have a candle.
I have a candle? Okay.
Woo! What we doing? Mommy is Jera, Dr. Super. Is it good?
Very good. That was very good. Hi, my name is Jasmine Gunn, and this video is why I should be selected as one of the placement exchange interns this spring. So the prompt has 5 questions, and I'm going to try to answer them as succinctly as possible. The first question is, who are you? Well, my name is Jasmine Gunn, as I mentioned before. As you can see from the introduction of this video, I turned 24 today, and I'm also a mom to a handsome 4-year-old boy. So just a bit about my academic journey. I started at Texas State University in 2012, and while I was attending my freshman year, I actually found out I was pregnant. And so even though I finished the semester and the year with a 4.0 GPA, I ended up transferring to the University of Houston downtown to come back home to Houston, where I was originally from. So while I was attending the University of Houston downtown, I was kind of feeling really lonely. UHD is very different from UH, the main campus, which is what people automatically think of. I'm not a Coug, I'm a Gator, and I'm a proud alumna. But one of the things about UHD is that it's a commuter campus, so they have a hard time getting students really engaged in the classroom, outside of the classroom. And when I attended, when I started off, I was very similar to that type of student that just went to class and went straight home and just commuted back and forth. But I found myself feeling really lonely by doing that, and so at the end of my junior year, I actually started looking for ways to get involved on campus. And one day when I just happened to check my email for the university, I saw an announcement that went out about looking for orientation leaders for the summer. And funny enough, I had actually never gone through an orientation. When I started at Texas State, I got it accepted so late to where it was after they had had all their orientation. So I really only met with an academic advisor and registered and just went straight to classes. And the same thing sort of happened with UHD, where because I was transferring in the summertime and I was busy doing stuff because I was pregnant, I didn't go through an orientation there either. So for me, it was kind of exciting because I thought maybe I can get the orientation experience by becoming an orientation leader myself. And I was lucky enough to be selected, and that's what sort of changed my entire experience at UHD. I went from somebody who wasn't involved to anything to that person that was involved in everything. So after orientation started to wind down, my best friend, who I actually met through orientation, came to me and said that they were looking for leaders to be a part of CAB, which was the Campus Activities Board, or the programming board at my campus. The previous board had quit mid-semester, so they were looking for students to take it on. And even though I wasn't really quite sure how to plan a program, I dove headfirst into it and became the director for special events. What I didn't know at the time was that I was going to be charged with creating a homecoming event for the university. So after doing some thinking, I actually came up with a program called the Paint Party. And by doing that, it was actually the biggest program that our university had ever seen, with over 200 students attending the event. So after that, and being more involved in CAB, I started to realize that even though I enjoyed my poli-sci classes, I didn't necessarily want to go to law school right after. But I also didn't know what I could do if I didn't go to law school, because I'd always planned on doing that even from the time I was a child. So my mentor, who was actually the advisor for the Campus Activities Board, he and I were talking, and I told him sort of how I was feeling and how I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do after college. And he asked me if I had ever thought about doing higher education or student affairs. And I didn't know what it was, but when he explained to me, it was sort of like what he was doing and what I was sort of doing at the time. I realized that it was combining sort of my passions all into one thing. I had originally wanted to go to law school because I really wanted to focus on education reform, particularly in the way that K through 12 is financed and how students who come from low-income backgrounds like myself can gain access to higher education. So for me, student affairs was just a way where I can combine that love of creating access to other people, but by working within the institution instead of on the outside of them in the law sector. So that's what led me to applying to a couple of different universities, and eventually I found myself here at the University of North Texas. Originally, I picked the University of North Texas because it was the farthest campus from all the ones that I had applied to, and then also it was the least diverse of the campuses that I had applied to as well. Coming from UHD, which is one of the most diverse universities in the entire nation, I wanted a particularly different experience because I wanted the opportunity to stretch myself and grow. For me, personal growth is one of the most important things that you can do in life. I think it's the purpose of life, and particularly I felt as if going to an institution that was basically the opposite of where I had been before would give me an opportunity to do the most growing. And because I had lived with my grandmother basically my entire undergraduate experience, I wanted the opportunity to just sort of be alone in a sense and raise my child by myself and just sort of foster my own sense of growth and independence. And so that's basically the story of how I got here to UNT. I've engaged my campus in conversations. I know personally that the students in the second year who are getting ready to graduate don't actually want to go to TPE. And so I've used this as a chance to highlight TPE's resources that they have online, such as the resume review, versus trying to push them into going somewhere where I know they're not going to go. And so the one positive that I can say that I've gotten from this is that even though they're not necessarily going to go to TPE, they still look to me as a resource when it comes to looking for jobs post-grad. And so the experience has been something that I've really appreciated because it's helped me grow as a person. I consider myself to be an extrovert, but the one thing I do know is that before I get comfortable with people, I can be extremely quiet. And so I've used the placement exchange as sort of a way to get me out of my initial shell so that I can foster those connections with other people. For me, relationships and relationship building are some of the most important parts of life as well. It's the thing I enjoy most about working to become a student affairs professional. And so I really appreciate the experience of being an ambassador because it's helped me be able to foster relationships with the other students on campus. One of the things that our program really pushes us to do is engage in some type of professional development opportunity. And so for myself, I've recognized that one of my future goals is, as soon as I finish this program, is to be heavily involved in some type of association professionally. So for me, TPE sort of fits in with that because some of the associations that sponsor TPE, such as NASPA or OKU are some of the ones that I want to be involved in once I finish my master's degree. And so for me, it's an opportunity to make those connections before I even leave the field. I attended TPE, which is the Texas Associations of Colleges and Universities Student Personnel Administrators. And for myself, it was a really eye-opening experience. I actually knew a lot of people there because I had applied to so many schools in Texas. And I also participated in the case study as well. And what I enjoyed the most about TPE wasn't necessarily the sessions that I got to sit on, although those were really great too, but it was being able to meet people and talk to people and build those connections with others. And I realized that I would just love to work with a professional association once I graduate. And so for me, becoming an intern would be an opportunity to do that before I even leave. For me, I'm hoping to expand on my skills as being a program planner. For me, the highest number of attendance that I had at an event in undergrad was 200 people. So this is really an opportunity to see like that type of program, but in a much grander and larger scale. And I also think it matters that I was programming for students versus actual professionals that are looking for a job. I just find the whole idea of TPE fascinating, and so I really want to attend and help build that program. I will say three of my top 5 strengths are maximizer, focus, and futuristic. And because of that, when I get to TPE, if I'm chosen, I don't want TPE to just be another TPE that was really great. I want it to be the best TPE that has ever been put on. And so I think that's something that I bring to the table if I'm selected, as somebody that's really focused and engaged on building the program to the best of my abilities. Another thing that I'm hoping to gain from the experience is, again, just the networking. I'm hoping I can meet professionals from all over the nation. At TACUSPA, I've got the opportunity to meet people all across the state, and that's something that I highly value. TPE to me just represents the ability to do that on a much larger scale. And I believe that the best student affairs practitioners are those that understand best practices. And I believe the best way to get best practices or understand what the best practices are to meet people who are implementing those best practices. So I'm hoping that those employers that are at TPE are those that I can learn from as well. And I also want to meet the candidates so I can see what the future of student affairs is looking like, and hopefully make those connections and those contacts that I can use later on in my own professional work. For myself, the thing that I think I can bring most is not only my experiences with programming, but my experiences with orientation as well. If there's one thing I know how to do, it's to make people feel welcomed and engaged in something. And so for me, the placement exchange almost seems like there's going to be that orientation process that I really enjoy. I'm no stranger to 13 and 14-hour days. So it brings in that atmosphere that I very much enjoy, and I think I would bring to it a person that is used to that type of atmosphere, that can operate really well in that setting. I also think I bring that unique perspective, having been a mother, but also sort of meeting the traditional student demographic with my age group. I think it gives me a unique sort of perspective on processes like this. And of course, I'm no stranger to multitasking because I have so many other things that go on outside of my academics. So if selected, I think I bring a very unique perspective that can be useful to a planning committee and to the people that are participating as well. I just want to thank you for taking the time to watch this, and thank you for taking the time to consider me to be an intern.